Hello. This meeting is being live streamed. All right. Well, look at that. We're live streaming.
I'll be damned.
You will. You won't. You won't be damned.
Technology is an amazing device.
Life is young, my friend.
You're doing God's work.
I just thought I'd mention one thing to you, Rob, too. Somebody I met says he has a automated machine to separate dry sift, to separate the good from the bad, electrostatically.
Very cool.
Okay,
well,
so it's
always
public.
been a
All
wish.
right, okay. Make sure we're all good here. I'm just going live. It was saying private there for a second, which was making me a little bit scared. So here we go.
So it's like gonna just be the three of us, huh? Okay, well, bring it on.
Is your
I
camera
see.
on, Rob?
I'm not using my camera. I'm doing this from the dark side of the moon.
The dark side of the moon. Well, listen, it's a podcast, so you can do it however you like. I do want to welcome everyone because we just went live. So welcome everyone who's watching on the Bubbleman's World YouTube channel. This is the first inaugural episode of the Legends of Hashish podcast. We do have Addison still waiting to come in. I'm sure he's getting his shit together now, but we do have Mr. Robert Connell Clark in the room from the dark side, as he just said. And Mr. Skunkman Sam is also present here. So two of the founding fathers of the Legends of Hashish event. So we're going to end up discussing that today and talk about our sort of memories and the history of the event and where it's going.
I would say we've got three of the founding fathers here.
Yes, absolutely. We definitely do. We definitely do. I'm going to send out a little message to Addy to make sure that he is coming. And then we'll get into it, boys. I hope you guys are both doing well. I hear you're in Amsterdam, Rob.
I am indeed in Amsterdam. Not for much longer, but I'm here.
Yeah. Wow, that's a full circle for you, huh? That's like what is that, like 30 some odd years?
35.
35 years in the same spot?
I know 30 in the same spot.
Okay.
Come on, man. I move around, I
know.
Place.
Howdy, Addison.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Welcome, brother.
Welcome. Thank you for having me on here.
I'm trying to get someone saying my mic is fuzzy. I hope it's not fuzzy because I have no idea where my good mic is anymore. My Raspberry mic has disappeared.
Uh-oh.
I know.
I'm not hearing any buzz. Not at our end.
You sound fine to me. I can ask Meredith to check.
You sound pretty good to me too.
All right, excellent. I'll just I'll mute when I'm not speaking. But what a great Wednesday morning to have you both present for our inaugural Legends of Hashish podcast. Addison and I were obviously Addison's been helping. I wouldn't say helping. I would say running Legends of Hashish for the last 3 years. How Addison sort of showed up on the scene was, he came to, I believe, our second event, which I guess we should start at the beginning. Now, do you guys remember if it was 2002 that we started this event? Because my memory is a little fuzzy.
My memory is way fuzzier than yours.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So I think it's around 2002 that we started. And you got to give a big shout out to Simone and the Artiste restaurant, because that was really, to me, that was the first key in being able to throw legends, was the fact that you guys were both friends with Simone. I don't know how far back you guys went with him prior to me popping up on the scene in, late 90s, early 2000s, but it seemed like you guys were pretty good friends with him.
Well, Michael actually knew Simone better than me or Rob, but we were all friends.
So it was a Michael. So Michael was another one of the potential founding fathers. He was involved from the beginning. He was, friends and partners with Sam and Rob from way back. And he's no
Michael
longer
helped arrange for the artwork for the tickets.
That's
yes,
who did
yes.
the art. That's who did that. Okay.
Well, it wasn't Michael that did it. He knew an artist who did it for us.
Can we still get in touch with that artist?
Probably.
I'd love to talk. I'd love to have him work with us. That'd be awesome.
I'd love to do an interview with him on the Legends of Hash podcast. So what I remember from Simone's place, this is a foggy memory, but I remember being there with you, Sam, and you may have been there as well, Rob. And we ate a meal. And when we finished, Sam was all excited because he's like, "Oh, Simone lets us have a puff in here." And I was like, "Really? Like you can just puff in this restaurant?" And I believe you had your brewer with you, Sam, was my memory, and that we smoked a couple of bowls in the artiste restaurant. And I remember like a couple being kind of upset that we were doing it. And Simone actually kicked them out of the restaurant because they made such a big stink about it. Do you have a memory of that?
Simone went out of his way to assist. And after the first one or two of the events, we didn't allow anybody in unless they were coming to the event.
Yeah, of course. But this was just us at his restaurant when it wasn't the event. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Look at that. That's the first.
I used to go there a lot. The first restaurant I ever went to when I moved here 35 years ago was the Artiste.
Really?
What,
I went there with
what
Michael.
were you looking at? I didn't see
I
it.
was just sitting there eating Lebanese food, but it ended up being the place we went back to. They were good bros, and it really was like Marcus is saying, we needed a place, and now the world is full of potential venues, but back then we had the right town, but you still had to find the right place. And the rub was that the Horeca, the restaurant union, had just ruled that nobody could smoke in a restaurant. Now, of course, the rulings are about tobacco. So the restaurateur, and it was about the staff who worked there to protect them. Okay, really good rules. We like all that stuff. But it was about tobacco. You can't write rules about something that doesn't really exist. So they, restaurant owners and pub owners and bar owners, a lot of them made their own personal rule inside of their doors. So if you really didn't like us or somebody else smoking, Simone or Rolfa would just say, that's fine. You can eat at a different restaurant,
Yeah.
It's okay. We had an Indian restaurant. You could do that. A couple, the Belgian bar downtown. That he had a really interesting idea. It's fun to see how regs change. He said, don't roll anything, but bring your glass piece. Then he didn't have to be a policeman and go around and go, you can't roll that, but you can roll that. And everybody smoked the tobacco here anyway. So, yeah, in this modern day and age, it's neat to see how people deal with changes.
It was a big one. Like you said, having the venue was huge. And I remember puffing with you before, Rob, I think at the Thai food restaurant that was behind the greenhouse restaurant off the Damrock. There was a little Thai food restaurant. It was like all Katoys who were the waiters, and they made really good
cultures
food.
that just accept what we wanted to do also. If they happen to be here, they were accepted as well. So what a place.
Totally. Yeah, it's definitely wild. Look at this little guy.
This is Gizmo.
Goodness.
We're fostering this guy right now. He's a beautiful dog, actually.
Jowls, man. How did you get Is that especially jowly breeding?
I think he's he's a rescue that we're fostering, and he's a pocket bully. So they rescued him, they were breeding him, and a woman rescued him. And the woman that we got our other dog from, she asked us if we would help. So I was like, you know what? We'll have him come kind of hang out with us. So this is his first day hanging out with us. So he's a little attached, but
welcome.
Yeah. Welcome to the family, buddy. Oh yeah. No, there's so many questions that I have, really. I was talking to Marcus yesterday about it. Oh shoot, there we go. Is that from the first one?
That's like 6 or 7.
This is 11.
11.
11?
Okay. Wow.
Oh, excuse me. It's 8.
8.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I was able to go to 2 different ones. I can't remember which ones. I still have the laminates from them, but we're stoked this year to bring back some of the original artwork, and to bring back some of the concepts from the original event that you guys were doing too. So yeah, it's exciting. It's definitely
This was one of the tickets the artist made for us, and then we printed the tickets from this.
oh wow, that is a relic, man. Look at that.
Dude, I've never even seen some of these. I had no idea they were full-size pictures. Sam's just got them all.
Well, when Michael
With
died,
the color palette too, which is crazy.
Straight up.
Michael died, his wife gave it all to me.
Oh, well, that's really nice of her.
Wow.
Rest in peace to Michael.
Rest in peace. Sam, you must have such a collection of these archives and artifacts. It's just
I have so much I've got several thousand books. I've got thousands of cannabis items beyond conception. My wife sometimes wonders if I'm nuts.
no, they're important, especially now.
Yeah, exactly. They're historical. I mean, it's so cool to see it. It's absolutely a wild situation. So listen, to talk about the beginning of Legends, from my perspective, it was a conversation that we all were having. I don't remember the exact conversations, but I remember Sam and Rob and Michael being involved and just talking about, how there were these great people that came to the Cannabis Cup. There was a 2,000 to 3,000 just randos that showed up, but there was really great people that were just coming from all these different areas, all these different travels. The charas lovers, the hash aficionados, the people who just really took it to a next level. And so we started having this discussion, and I definitely remember the metaphor of, if we could just run all of the people from the Cannabis Cup through a set of bubble bags and just keep the 90 micron, I think it was the 73 micron at the time, because there was no 90 micron bag yet. That bag came later. So it was like, if we could just collect the 73 heads, metaphorically, the headiest of the heady people that were at this event. And I remember you guys were a little kind of like, do you think you can sell 50 tickets? And it was kind of, you guys had your crew with the wives and stuff that you brought. And then there was literally 40 plus tickets left that needed to be sold. The money needed to be collected. And it was kind of, this group thing where, they had the balloon. That's right. One year it was a balloon.
The third year.
Right. So yeah, just getting the artists together, getting the event together, talking to Simone. Rob had an amazing neighbor who may still be living above him. I'm not sure if Sid still lives above you there, Rob.
Yep, he's still there.
Amazing. So he's also must have been there for 30 years. So Sid had this incredible collection of Afghani Hubble bubble pipes, which you can see in Rob's book, Hashish, which my goodness, Rob, I was telling someone to get that book the other day, and they came back and was like, it's $500. And I was like, no, it's not $500.
Oh, thank you, Marcus, for letting me have an opportunity to drop an absolutely blatant self-promotion.
Well, please, it's a great book.
Hashish will be back in print within a month or three.
Dude, that is essential. I don't know what.
Too fancy, just to reprint new cover. Some color pictures where they were black and white before, but I'm not writing anything new, so it's really just archival, sort of, because I don't want people to find them for $300 to $500 on eBay.
No. And Rob, is this an exclusive? You're saying this for the first time here with us?
Absolutely.
Oh, here we go. So that's for everybody. That's amazing.
The only other one that knows about it is my lady who's doing the layout for it. So yeah, and I'm sure she's not watching this. So there you go.
You're not going to add the static, like one page.
I'm going to do a new preface, but I'm not going to talk about new techniques or any of that. I'm just going to try to put it in context. That's all.
Okay.
I don't have time to do that. I'm working on other projects, and I just want to get it out there because it's kind of irritating it's not out there. Jim just didn't want to do it anymore, so he gave it back to me, and now I'm going to do it before somebody else does it too. I mean, it isn't that hard, frankly. So
I don't know a single hash maker that doesn't know about that book, that doesn't talk about that book or have an understanding. So to have it go back out into print, I think it'll really for a lot of guys, I think it'll be their first time actually getting to open it up and see it. So I wonder what sort of impact it'll have on the hash community now, because solventless hash is so popular at this point. But I wonder what sort of impact if it'll, and I guarantee you it'll sell a lot. I already know there's probably a lot of people that are marking that down and pretty excited about that. So how does it feel to put it back out? What was the motivation for that? You said that it had to do with something about, not wanting people to have to pay $500. Was there other motivation for it?
It's just information. I mean, there were only 10,000 printed to begin with.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a rare book. Maybe if you're a book collector, there are a lot smaller printings of canvas books. My God, there's ones in the hundreds, but it's still pretty small run. I mean, compared to a grower's guide or something. So yeah.
How many are you going to put out this time?
On demand. It'll be
great.
an Amazon, very, very likely an Amazon publication.
Well, we
even
definitely
better.
we want to carry it.
For people who
We'll carry it for sure. We'd
people
love
who
to.
want it. So yeah, no, it'll be there.
We've got a.
Oh yeah.
We're ready to go, but wait a
It
minute.
was an envelope, pure hemp paper, and then this was the this one is for the
Oh, for the judges, probably, yeah.
Oh yeah. Man, you got to scan these things and send them to me. I got to see.
We definitely
These are
we need to get some access to this for sure. That's awesome. Hashish, the book as well, was obviously, I don't know if Legends of Hashish could have happened without the book Hashish. It was also a part of it. There was, in the beginning, I'll be honest, like for me, selling the tickets was very easy because people wanted to spend a night in a special environment and access to Rob and Sam. They didn't, you guys weren't really like out there. Like you didn't like use the fact that you were like popular and had this sort of level of popularity in the scene. You didn't really use it. You didn't really get in there with it. You guys were more, like elusive. So people were just like, dude, I would pay €100 to go hang out with those guys for a night and smoke hash. And, a lot of that happened as well when you invited Sid and brought those pipes. I mean, those were pipes that they had seen in the book Hashish, right in the middle of the picture photos. There's all these beautiful pictures of Hubbly Bubblies. To have one that was like 100 years old, show up at the party, and then have Sam, who's super elusive, dumping grams of his even more elusive 50 and 60, Ciroc or whatever you want to call it, his dry sift, dunk number 1 dry sift into the Hubbly Bubbly. Hash bean lighting it with a flame coming off of it like a foot
sprinkled
and a
on
half high.
top of about 10 grams of little tapioca-sized balls of Afghan.
The screen.
So you could keep that made the barbecue that you could keep feeding the barbecue with scoops of powder.
Dude,
The
it was the
Legends of
first time-
Hash is the highest I've ever been in my entire life was from that pipe. I left with Don and Aaron the first time, and it was kind of like being like the young drunk kid, having to kind of be walked out. And I thought I knew my stuff. And then I just remember waking up the next day, not knowing where I was because I'm in another country, obviously, and just being high for the entire next day at the Cup. It was honestly the highest I've ever been still to this day. We got to get one of those for the event, man. I'd love to. I know they're so hard to get and such an artifact, but it would be amazing to have that sort of a, if we could do that at the event and have one and then just load it up, I think it would, because you see nowadays, they have the leaf blower and they have all these things that they kind of use. And I just think that if we had access to one of those, I remember having to stand up on this, like, it was like a steps ladder that you had to stand on to hit it. So it was even more dangerous when you got off that thing.
Oh yeah.
But
I remember hitting it one year.
And the real killer is lighting it, because you have to take 3 big, enormous fucking draws and blow it out. Take another one, take another one, take another. And man, to light it, you really had to have good lungs. And there was even a couple of ladies who were actually able to light them. Remember that?
That's what I was just gonna say.
Scandinavia.
Who is Bubbles? Who is your friend from Denmark?
That was Hash Bean.
Okay, and he brought a lady, or he brought a friend who brought a lady one time. Just like a
Yes.
25-year-old or something, 30-year-old. I
That
don't
boy
know.
could rip.
He was tearing it up, but the
He could
lady
kill it.
that he and his buddy brought tore it up even more. Everybody sat down except for her. I mean, a few of us had to get back up and smoke with her because she was looking around like, "What's going on, guys?" And
That might
she
have been
had
Alex's
serious
wife.
lungs, man. There are just
That
people
might-
who are adapted for that. But
It's
my
so
God.
true. It's totally true.
Oh, the shirt design. We got to redo that shirt. You got to
Totally.
send that to me, Sam.
I'll tell you, the
yeah,
first couple of
swords.
legends, the first couple of legends, and that pipe in particular, it really, like, I remember a few people that came that were like, yeah, I won't make that mistake again. Like this, I thought I wanted to come because it was the ticket to be at, and we really tried to promote legends as this isn't a party to just be at. This is a place to come only if you want to wake up higher than you've ever been, you want to go to bed higher than you've ever been. And, because truly when Addison says he was higher than he's ever been, I used to listen to Rob tell me, oh, I was at Sam's house last night and I left so stoned. And I'd kind of be like, well, I mean, how stoned could you really be, Rob? I mean, come on. And this was me being ignorant because I hadn't been to Sam's house and I hadn't really smoked Sam's hash. I'd smoked like a rip of it here and there, but I hadn't sat down for a session. And I do remember one time leaving Sam's house, almost unable to walk, completely destroyed in the greatest of ways, and then realizing Rob's words like, oh, that's what he was talking about. You can't believe it unless you experience it. Otherwise, you just, you have your big hat.
My real goal was, it was one night when the object was to smoke too much.
Yeah.
It's every night. Every night. That's
which is
the
saying a
object.
lot for you, Sam. That's saying a lot for you because, when I went over to your house the first time, I'm pretty sure you smoked about 30 to 40 bong rips of your dry sift, and I was just like, what the fuck is this guy like a?
Well, when I was younger, I
machine?
could do that in 1 minute.
Ooh, yeah.
Some people have the capacity. That's just, and
But
you know what
also
it
the
speaks to,
hack.
though. Oh, go ahead, Marcus.
No, I was just saying, and also the hack, the capacity and the hack. The hack was special.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely. Because at the time, there was nobody else who had dry sift that really melted and bubbled. When you came up with water hash, you also got stuff that melted and bubbled. But the dry sift was really the first showing the light to people that it's possible.
Totally. Listen, before I took those pictures, people had no idea. When I took those pictures of your hash, when you were like, sure, yeah, take some pictures of my hash, and I posted, I think it was on IC Mag or something, the 99.999% dry sift, that was a game changer. Like, people were like, it shifted people's minds like, oh, this is possible. Because really before, it wasn't to anyone other than you guys. You guys were like the lone group.
And we came up with full melt clear dome, and if it don't bubble, it ain't worth the trouble, and all kinds of other silly sayings.
Totally. Yeah, these were the OG days for me, for sure. It was so excited. I'll tell you, Sam, I've never seen you more excited than at the first Legends. You were like a kid in a candy store loading that bowl. You were so fucking happy that everyone was just getting so high. I felt like I learned a lot about you in that day, and I dismissed every single, socially poisoning thing that people had said about you that just didn't know you, that they were like, wow, they don't know how much this guy loves cannabis. They're just fucking ignorant. If they could just be here in this moment and see how much this man loves hashish and cannabis.
Well, also too, at the first one, there was no sort of a contest. We had a contest for the first time at the second or third one. I forget which one. And where other people brought stuff, but the first one, really, it was just a few people had, traditional good hash. And then I brought some of my stuff that was just, nail you to the ceiling, dry sift.
Sam, can you talk a little bit about Can you talk a little, Sam, about the second year and how the contest came about and what that looked like?
Crap, I have trouble remembering which year is which year now. I mean, we had like 10 or 11 or 12 of them. I don't even remember anymore. And the first year was smaller and much more informal. And then we decided, we should make something of this. So we invited people to bring hash and we could judge it. And that's when it got really, really interesting, because within a couple of years, people were bringing water hash, they were bringing dry sip, they were bringing stuff that absolutely did bubble, and it was killer. And
Oh, yeah.
the other thing is, let me tell you something, judging 25 or 30 entries in a single night in a few hours, let me tell you, I mean, you better smoke the first one best, because you can easily tell which ones taste the best. But if you think you could separate the effects from the
No.
first, second, third, fourth different samples,
No.
if I can't do it, nobody can do it, but
No.
Totally.
But it was
I would
fun.
add to that. That that year, before really choosing it as a contest, because I remember it becoming a contest at the event. But before we got to the event, I had made the decision that I was only going to sell tickets to people, not because of who they were in the cannabis scene, but by what hash they had. So if you could show me beautiful hash, and I wasn't taking it, I wasn't like, give me 5 grams of beautiful hash. I was just saying, just show me that you have something that is worthy of being in the room. And I started, it was probably the second year that I started doing that. You couldn't really get a ticket unless you had a nice piece of hash. And so that changed everything, because now you have 50 people at the event and a solid 40 of them, have hash, and a solid 15 to 20 of them have hash that is an entry worthy hash piece. So I kind of remember
we actually had many different kinds of hash. I mean, there was water hash at first, much more than dry sipped. Then there was dry sipped. But you remember the guy who brought the hand rubbed?
Dude, I'll never forget it.
About 10 grams of hemp. Unfortunately, it was not great. It was interesting, but it wasn't truly great. But he tried.
Listen, there's a funny story for that, because I was sitting with Todd McCormick and Emilio owned the company Trippy Sticks. So he really owned the first little vaporizer that you could actually put hash into, that it was a coil, not like a cart. And so he was there, and I remember meeting the guy. The guy was so sweet. He's like, I hand rubbed my indoor crop and I got like 10 grams. It was a beautiful bar. I remember it looked like caramel. It was like, I was like, oh my God, like this is actually, I was like, you have to be there. This is unique. But then he came and sat at my table, and Todd was like, let me try a little bit of your hash. And he put it in the Trippy Stick and he vaporized it. And both him and Emilio, and if you ask them about this, they will definitely remember. Todd immediately was like, oh my God, that hash tastes like feet. And Emilio said the exact same thing. It was like, I don't know if it was the sweat from his hands or what it was, but it was like, and I remember Todd being like, kind of like, even afterwards, like disappointed, like, oh my God, that was so disappointing. It was such beautiful looking hash. But when you vaporize it, if you smoked it, it didn't have that taste. But if you vaped it and you just gently took that top layer of volatiles off, apparently some oils from his hand were being vaporized in that as well. And it was, it didn't pass the muster test. I felt bad because he came in like on a cloud. He was like, I got 10 grams of indoor rubbed sift, and it was
We
hash.
put it in the contest because he was the only one who had a 10-gram piece of hand rub.
Of course. I mean, holy shit, who's doing that? That was unbelievable.
Do you remember what strain it was?
I honestly do not remember. I don't think I can remember the strain of anything. Somewhere we've got lists in my paperwork. We've got lists of all the winners, or at least for some of the years. But I have no idea what variety that one was off the top of my head.
Yeah, there was always
unique Spanish grower.
There's always like unique different ways. When I went the first year, I remember Don and Aaron brought me, and we were smoking dry sift with a flashlight. And it was like,
Oh
I've-
yeah, it was that super bright fucking flashlight that would
It was it a green one?
it would
green?
vaporize.
Yeah.
It would vaporize, and you had to be careful not to point it at anybody, or their eyes would get vaporized.
Yep. That was, I remember trying it there. And then when we came back to the States, Don and Aaron had a house in Hollywood, I think. And I would go up and visit them, and they had the flashlight, and we would smoke at their house the same way. But that dry sift, I think it was, what strain was it? I think it
Slee Stack.
Slee Stack. That's what it was. Yeah, it was
was
Slee
Slee
Stack.
Stack. I know
And
it
Rob and I really like Slee Stack. Number one, I cleaned it up really, really good for them. And number two, it had this weird effect that as long as you smoked it, you didn't really, most cannabis, you smoke it and first it stimulates you and then it depresses and you sleep. But this stuff didn't. We would smoke it and we'd stay up all fucking night till 3 o'clock smoking.
It was amazing.
You could stay up and write books. I mean, it was really good. But it's interesting too, because I was so curious about it. I wanted to see a flower of it. So we grew it. It was some of the least resiny looking, skankiest. It didn't smell nice. And the hash also didn't have any real varietal character. It had nothing to it. But it had this unique effect. And
I don't know why that was.
If you put it in a bag, nobody would have bought it.
Yeah, I think
weird.
it was the terpene combination, but I don't think it was the cannabinoid content. I think it was the
Probably
terpene.
not. But it wasn't loud. It wasn't particularly terpy either, the flower or the resin. So it made me wonder, back in those days, it was still a bit about maybe there is something more going on than just the terps and now other aromatic.
Well, the other thing about it, Rob, was that most of the cannabis, some cannabis is really easy to dry sift the resin off. Skunk number one is really easy. Slee Stack is really easy. But some
it was a high yielder.
Don't get much resin from it. Most of it gets left behind in the plant material.
Right. But when you looked at a Slee Stack flower, even one's grown correctly, it didn't look like it had very much resin. So that's usually one where, okay, you get resin powder, but it isn't that pure, or, if you get a lot of it. It was a weird plant. And we never did get a hold of that. But
you crossed it.
I crossed Slee Stack with skunk, hoping to create a variety that produced resin that would just fall off when you whistled. But when it developed, I grew, I don't know, a few hundred of the plants. They just, didn't produce hash as easily as either Slee Stack or skunk. Unfortunately, I tried.
I mean,
could have been a recessive.
End of the spectrum, just so we're talking about yield from resiny looking things. Take a haze, okay, that makes beautiful resin. Takes forever to get it, but eventually you get a whole bunch of it. And then you try to extract it. Water works better than dry, but you still don't get squat.
No, what works better, Rob, is you squash it and make rosin.
That's an approach I've never been directly involved with, but that would work great. But for some reason, during all the sieving, wet or dry process, you really don't end up with much of anything, which is always disappointing to me because that's what I always want to be.
I agree with you.
And
why do you think that is, Rob? Do you think it's just the size of the heads, or what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think they're too sticky. A lot of the hazes that we had back in the Santa Cruz days that David had, or excuse me, Sam had, were they were sticky. Some of them would look greasy on the inside of the bag.
Yeah, I had ones that were so greasy they would grease the bag, as you say.
Right, and that's not gonna be good passing through a sieve with any variety. Maybe that's one reason all this sieving thing went to being so cold. Just to make those greasy ones as solid as possible. But there are also other resins that at any temperature sieve. I mean, or close to any temperature, they sieve. You don't have to be freezing cold. Yeah, it works better, but
I wonder if you use these new cryo techniques on those hazes, if it could work, because it would keep it colder and would keep the stickiness down.
Well,
I
you
wonder if that
have
would
to
make a
try,
difference.
but I don't think so.
But they
because-
have to have the patience to grow the bastards
Yeah.
first.
Oh,
Also, too,
yeah.
the way I would make my dry sift was we would get buds, manicure them just minimally, run them through a rotary particle separator, a pharmaceutical grade rotary sifter, and but it was in a freezer, and we stored the weed overnight in the freezer. So we did it at really, really cold temperatures because otherwise you got a lot of smearing and stuff. The other thing we did with skunk anyway was we would dry it for 2 weeks perfectly and then cure it in a box for 3 months. So we were really squeezing raisins, not grapes.
Yep. Pre-cured.
I'll never forget the first time we went to your greenhouse and made some. It was absolutely a phenomenal experience. It was the hardest thing ever because I wasn't allowed to share the information or post pictures about it, but it was a rite of passage for me to rake some plant matter over the screens with Rob while Sam was standing watching us. You know, 7 minutes of sieving with 55-gallon barrels of material. And I don't know, I think we made like 7 or 9 kilos or something.
The screens were
10
like
feet
4
long.
by 6 foot.
A lot bigger. They were like 8 foot by something. You had really big
I just
ones.
remember they were big ones.
They were
a
big
bucket
ones.
list situation right there.
Years later, I posted a picture of just the hash on the floor of the greenhouse, and people were like, they couldn't really tell, but you could see, like, I can't remember if it was Rob or Sam's shoes just sticking out of the corner of the picture. And you realize that this wasn't like a small square on a table. It was like 8 feet by 5 feet, you know, and then we'd start writing things into it. I think we wrote Legends of Hash one time, and we wrote something dry sift.
The other
maybe.
thing that was, of course, important was first you screen it to get rid of anything that's too big to be resin heads. Then you screen it again to get rid of stuff that's too small to be good. So it's not resin, it's other contaminants.
Yeah.
Right. Makes sense.
And so my question now for both of you guys, I had a couple different questions, but one of them was, what do you guys think now? How, you know, being the position that you both had, all three of you especially, what do you think of the whole solventless hash scene now, and the word solventless, and what do you think of all this? Is this what you expected or what you thought when you were doing all this stuff, or how do you welcome all this now?
Well, I could personally say that for me, the gold standard is dry sift of my favorite strain, or anybody's favorite strain. If they had dry sift of that, cleaned up to 99.9% resin heads, I don't see how it can be beat. But I've met people who prefer, the fresh frozen from live plants, but I don't know. I hate to say it, but they're almost too terpene, and they're not cured and whatever. I don't find it as pleasant as really, really good dry sift.
What do you? And you mentioned.
The difference between Sam and everyone else is that he has it all in his stash. And I used to get this with people who were like, oh, I prefer BHO or I prefer whatever to full melt bubble. And I would be like, but do you have full melt bubble in your stash? Like, is it in your stash? Because we had this conversation many years ago, whereas I think it was, well, Sam for sure smokes the best that he has. Rob used to save his best. And so it was a different way of, he'd always get, he'd be like, oh, I'm saving my best. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rob.
No, it's really simple, because the truth is I was always smoking my best. Rob was always smoking his worst first, so he was always smoking his worst.
Rob's worst was pretty good though.
That only makes sense if you think you're gonna die before your next hit.
I
So
knew I was going to die.
my
before
more,
my
my slightly more longevity approach is to smoke the weakest first, because then the next one will still rock your socks.
Mhm.
If you start with the most rockin', do you start your day with your strongest herb or your strongest hash or your strongest, do you drink whiskey for breakfast?
Some people do.
That's my logic, was to work up, sort of sculpt a high, you know,
And-
rather than
and
just
to me,
dive
it's
into
as
the
simple as-
first thing.
To me, it's as simple as I always want to smoke my best. And if I
Yeah.
don't have any more of it, I'll smoke my second best, which is then my best.
I gotta say I'm more like Sam in that sense too. And I think it's kind of, in child psychology, when they say you put, what is it? One Oreo in front of a kid, or you tell them if you wait, you'll get 2 Oreos later. I've always been like the give me the Oreo right now kind of kid. I'm like, give me the good stuff right now. So I think I'd probably side more with Sam on it for sure.
Well, that's the eat dessert first mentality.
Yeah. Definitely. So what do you guys think of rosin? Sam, you mentioned earlier, the best way to
I
get
like
the plant to
rosin.
express. So
I like rosin very much. If I don't have great dry sip, I'll take great rosin without blinking an eye.
Yep. And then next question, what do you guys think about all of these tools that have come to the table, whether it be the slurper, the vape pen, the new bangers that we have beyond slurpers, like large gavels, capping? What do you think of all that technology, and have you guys kind of jumped in on that as well?
Well, I'm a believer in technology.
There you go. Yep.
I don't think Puffco delivers the best hit, but it certainly is the easiest hit, and I like ease.
Shout out to Roger and Puffco for sure.
Have you tried the new XL, Sam? I think you need one of these.
No, I have not tried it. I wanted to order it, but they won't ship it to Holland. So I'll have to pick it
really?
up when I'm in California next time.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure if Roger and those guys are watching, they would figure out how to get you one of those.
Totally.
Roger, I'm waiting.
Roger, you got to hook them up. What's up?
She's great too, because we got 137 people watching in the room right now. The chat's going off. I did ask people if they had any questions, so feel free to ask the questions, but I haven't seen too many so far. We did the Legends of Hash, I think 12 or 13 times in Amsterdam. We ended up doing it a couple of times in Barcelona. I did it a couple of times in Vancouver. You're on the third one now in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and none of the three of us founders have been to the LA one. That's a crime.
I know. We got to.
And
you guys
got to get down there.
I know. I just haven't been there. If I was there at the right time of the year, I would absolutely be there.
I can make a budget to get you out here, Sam. That's not a problem. Rob, Marcus, I've been trying to get Marcus to come forever, and I think we're getting closer, but just let me know. I'd love.
We're going to have to.
You could bring
Marcus.
a Hubley.
We'll have to sneak Marcus in a gunny sack or something, and just
put a mustache on him.
You know what?
Put a mustache on him.
That's all right. We'll clone him. We'll put him into tissue culture, and then we'll regrow him at the other side of the border. Addison, what is your date on the Legends?
December 2nd and 3rd. You guys are both welcome to come. Let me know how I can help you guys get here. I'd love to have you guys there, and that December 2nd and 3rd this year. So
this year, but next year maybe.
I will be in
let's
California.
figure it out.
I will be in California in November, and so I don't know if I want to go back to California so fast, but if I did, that's a damn good reason to do it.
Well, next year maybe we
go hook up with Addison and puff some bowls. He's got some good hats.
Oh, yeah, love to. That'd be definitely right off the list. I remember going to my experience from Legends was watching when I went. the way the judging worked was there were paper plates out, and people came up and they took a paper plate and they wrote the name of what they had on it, and they left the stuff there. And then when you came up, you had your own paper plate, and you would kind of have a black marker, and you'd put the hash there, circle it, and write what it was, and you'd come up and get like 3 or 4 different ones, and then sit down. Do you guys remember that process? Because that's how I always remembered it was with the paper plates and the markers.
The judging only had, I forget, 5, 6, whatever judges. All the rest were just, people at the event and the competitors and stuff. But the judging, man, it was tough. It was brutal. I mean, trying to judge 25 killer varieties of hash in a few hours, man, that's not easy. It really isn't.
Yeah.
No,
last year there was and we've changed it because of this, but last year we were in a position where the judges, the hash makers themselves, they had about 24 hours to judge 60 entries. And I felt so bad about that because, we added the second day so we could do the judging. The idea of the brunch came for 2 reasons. One, we wanted to make sure that we could extend the amount of the period of time to accommodate the judging. But the second one was it was so hard to get it to a 25 maker, 40 maker list because there are so many makers that want to be a part of it. So we added the brunch also to be able to get those makers in to the brunch, at least if they weren't able to get on the list. And then we could meet them, break bread with them, sit down, see what they were all about, get an understanding of their companies and who they are and what they do. And all of this process has always been so odd for me because, when you guys originally did Legends, it was not for promotion, and there was no promotion and there was no cameras. So bringing it to the US and figuring out how to keep it, it's true to what you guys created, but then also make it so that it could function in this environment.
It's called the Americanization of Legends of Hashish.
Yep. I'm guilty of that for sure.
Well, listen, the original Legends, we can talk about this a little bit. There was a reason why listen, obviously, if you don't know this about Sam already, he doesn't like to have his picture taken. He doesn't like pictures circulating of him, which is why there's a stuffed animal on the podcast right now. So, which is fine. No
Wait,
problem.
that's not Sam?
That's
Sam I am.
There he is.
Can't you tell he's got his little mask? He's wearing his mask incorrectly, just like Sam would do, just right around the neck there. Making sure.
I love the mask.
That's because he thinks COVID is over, but now it's starting again.
Yeah, well, cannabis cures COVID, so
So yeah, that rule changed once, and the other reason was, there was a fair amount of, some pretty serious hash guys in the room in the earlier days that ended up at the event that also would very much appreciate not having any pictures.
You're talking about people who moved hashish large quantities,
yes,
and they didn't want their pictures taken.
That's right, and I only knew how serious it was after the first year. I hit that pipe. I got so high. I went outside and I was kind of just like a little pale. I needed a little bit of fresh air. And I go out there and Steve is out there. Steve Dumac, the nose. So the nose is out there and he's all like pale. And I'm like, are you too high? And he looks at me and he's like, no, I just looked around the room and I saw who was in the room and it freaked me out. So I guess he recognized these smuggler guys and was like, holy fuck, those are some serious dudes, man.
Well, they used to say, there's 2 kinds of cannabis people. Ones that can use suitcases, or 3 kinds. One that need a truck, and one that need forklifts and boats.
Exactly.
Big
the forklift
voice.
one, that was in Howard's book. 2 types of hash dealers, those that require forklifts and those that do not. And these were forklift guys. So freaked Steve out. He was just like, what the fuck, dude? How the fuck do you know these guys? I don't think these guys have ever been in a room together.
That's legendary.
One more reason. Yeah, so that's why there was no, and it really changed. I saw Diana just asked in the chat room, do you allow cameras at Legends? Well, now we do, because it's not illegal. There's not, we don't need to protect anyone the same way we did. Although I will say those early days were spectacular, not having the phone and the promotions, because there was a sort of rule at Legends, like, we're not promoting ourselves. Don't bring your postcards. Don't, like, Rob wasn't putting out like discounts for books on the nobody was promoting themselves at the event. That was kind of the key. Don't promote yourself at the event. Don't do business. Like, just smoke hash and love hash.
Yeah, what we put on the table in front of each person's seat was a little the Garden of Kafur or City Hidi, a little legend of hashish.
Yep. And with that being said, there's a lot of confusion, I think, in the in hash right now and in the community about what Legends of Hash actually means. And a lot of guys think that, or under the impression that Legends of Hash, if you enter and you win, you're Legend of Hash. And I think this is a great opportunity for you guys to explain what the true origin of that is and why it's called Legends of Hash. If you guys could get into that real quick.
Let me jump in a little early on this one. I mean, David and I looked at this years ago with everybody else involved, and there were a few legends. Sidi Hidi, Sheikh Haydar. I mean, Baba Humastan. I mean, you go back through the history, which is there. It's scant, of course, because these were deviant, weirdo, fringe liver people. I mean, nobody really spent a lot of volumes writing about them, but you soon run out of characters. But
Well,
it's
that's
never.
why we added the
it is
Garden of Kafur.
It is a competition.
Yeah.
And it always has been. And we've gone through phases of that, which is interesting about who've been the winners have been sort of in phases over the years, but none of them became legends. They got a good booby prize, but none of them became legends. That wasn't what it was about, to answer your question.
And can you tell us more about the gentleman you just mentioned? Were they Babas? Were they, because you say they were kind of fringe on the outside. What was a little more, maybe pick one of those guys?
I think, let me see, all of those people, three I mentioned, they're all Muslim,
nomadic
types. Well, no, probably not, because they were around gardens.
Village and everything else.
Well, I think one of the odder ones was
the whole thing is it's mystical, and that was the whole point of doing this, was to make a mystical sort of event. But you run out of legendary legends pretty soon. But this has never been an event to make legends. That wasn't the idea.
No.
And it was never
the legends from hundreds of years ago.
Exactly. 100 years and back.
No,
some people would hate
more than 100 years.
Yeah, beyond 100. Yeah, I think that should be the rule. If you're 100 and you've been doing this that long, you
one of the oddest
that,
ones, of course, was Sidi Hidi. Rob and I were in Morocco, and we went and saw Paul Bowles, who had written a little bit about Sidi Hidi, and he gave us a map to find the grave of Sidi Hidi. And Rob and I mean, we went driving through the desert, way out to bumfuck Morocco, and we were unable to find his grave, but we found the well that Sidi Hidi used to use. So we were almost successful. And but Sidi Hidi was a bit of a character. He was a wife-stealing chicken thief who, do you remember all the funny things about him, Rob?
Yeah, he wasn't necessarily a superlative citizen, bit of a brigand. And you go to look for your own personal heroes, and that's the one David and I really were trying to expose. People know about Babaku and
so it was you guys that went in 97 to look for his grave.
Yeah, that'd be us. Was a
That is so
absolutely.
taxi
cool, dude.
driver. Some taxi driver
Like,
kept
see-
saying, "Yes, I know exactly where you need to go." You
Do
know,
you see how elusive you guys are? Because in this City Hitty document that we gave away, it says in 1997, several dedicated Charasi researchers traveled to Morocco armed with a map and verbal instructions from the ever helpful Paul Bowles. And his fucking name is actually Bowles. How crazy is that? A guy with the last name Bowles gave you a map to go find City Hitty. Like, dude, you guys are fucking cool, man. Like, come on.
You couldn't make this up, you know. That's what's so great about it. That's what's so awesome. It fits so
that's
perfect
because
into the
it's
universe.
real. As my
Yeah,
dad
no,
told me
that's
really
what it
early
is.
on, always tell the truth. Then you never have to remember what you said.
Yeah.
So,
And
good-
I
it's
just
a good-
appreciate I appreciate that you guys aren't chasing clout, that you don't even put like your names as the researchers. Like today, no one would do that. They would be
Oh,
like,
there'd be a link. There'd be a link in there to your
oh
merch
my
page.
God,
To
I
where
was,
you-
I
the
was the
fuck
guy.
else.
I was
Where you
the
could
guy
buy
that
the
did
City
it.
Hitty
Come on, guys.
t-shirt and a
come
copy
on,
of the
guys.
map.
Think back 5 minutes of the conversation. Who was at this event? I mean, there were people
yeah.
at this event I never had seen before. I mean, it doesn't take Steve Ace to sum it up. I mean, there were a bunch of people there. I never saw him before. I never will see him again. I knew they had something to do with it or they wouldn't be there. And some amazing pieces showed up that were a little larger than 10 grams that just weren't entered, that also went into that pipe. And those just came from guys who rocked up because they had an old piece. You know, they're archivists as well.
That's one thing I liked was smoking out of Sid's Hubbly Bubblies. When you light it, the flame jumps up 2 feet. That's once you
Yeah,
see
that
that,
was epic.
it's mind blowing. And
Marcus,
when
we got
were
to get
doing
Deppy
that-
to make a hubbly bubbly.
we were doing that with dry sift that was priceless, and it was like 90% resin heads. And what we would do is we'd put a foundation of some Afghan or some other great hash underneath that didn't even get lit. It was really just support. And then we would sprinkle a couple grams in and have someone light it, and about 10 people drawn it. Then I'd throw in another couple grams. Do it again, another couple
He
grams.
did at a
And we just
time.
did that all night long.
Dude, hitting that, I got to hit it only once when it was a fresh pour. And oh my God, it was almost too much. Like when you went to blow out, it was like you almost didn't have lung power to breathe out. Kind of like the story you told of Rob when he took the giant rip of dry sift and couldn't breathe for a minute or something.
Well, that's life in the big city, I always believed in always too much.
Yeah. Too much is just enough. That's the way to be.
Yeah. Well, as a founding partner, founder of Legends of Hash, we needed that from you. That's what you brought to the table. So, and trust me, Legends is still that.
I was really happy because the great hash we were smoking the first year was just mine. I mean, there was a good hash there, but the great hash. The second year, there was, a handful of water hashes or maybe some dry citra there. By the third, fourth year, I mean, there was serious competition.
Oh yeah.
True.
Well,
It's true.
I've got a
Everyone was
question.
showing up.
So-
it went back and forth too. I mean, as David said, it first off led by his dry sieve. Then other people came in and out with the waters. Then Renee showed up with his first fresh resin gland things that anybody'd seen. And yes, it's hashish. It was done through water bags, but fuck, he didn't dry the shit. So that that was a weird one. And he won for 2 years. And then it was like, should we stop him from doing this? Because it's really like not in the tradition of a firm, normal piece of hash. He'd come with it in between little chili blocks in like an organ transplant
Remember, he brought it
Oh,
frozen.
so good.
He brought it frozen in a plastic Tupperware.
Yeah, exactly. And that was just kind of too weird. So then that he told me he really shouldn't bring it anymore. He won, of course. Super herpy
But
Estonia. I mean, but it's a new generation of tech.
But
So
he
simple
used
tech.
no
So
solvents making
then
it. That's what was important.
exactly. And then JJ came back with, no, I could make dry sift that's like the back on the original model, and he was swept in 2 years. So
Yeah, we had JJ. We had
dry
JJ with us
sift,
last year.
everybody to rest. So,
JJ is very clever dude.
yeah.
He used to sit in my house and I would go in the other room and make dry sift. And step by step by step, after hundreds of exposures, he sort of figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah, he was at
Probably
Legends last year.
A glimpse through the door.
Yeah, it was
That's
it was an
awesome.
honor. It was an honor
be.
to have him. Yeah, it was an honor to have him last year with us, and he definitely came all the way out, spent some time with us, and was at the event. And I think, you know, we still make sure that at Legends there's no flower smoking inside. You know, we have a great big outside area, just because we feel like it's, you know, it really started back with you guys with, you know, no smoking, no combustion, in terms of, you know, anything besides hash. And then now we have that same rule where, you know, we got these guys judging, there's 60 entries. This year we try to change it up a little bit. We're going to have them judge all the rosin at home. Much easier for us to get that to them. They pick that up from us and they judge the rosin about 3 weeks before the event. And then they come into the event and all they're going to judge at Legends this year is the melt and the dry sift. So we make it a little easier for them.
I think it's a good idea because the more judging I've done, and I've done a lot of judging, I've come to the conclusion that to be fair, what you really need to do is fresh in the morning, start one variety, the next morning, the next variety, the next morning, the next variety. And then if you're not sure at the end of all 25, do the top 3 again.
Yeah. Yeah, we eliminated any potency judging at all. There's no, you know, there's only 4 different factors. There's how does it look? How does it smell? How does it taste? And then the last one is after banger. So how does that material look in the banger afterward when you hit it at the proper temp, capped it at the proper temp? What do you get? Because we feel like everything that the farmer and the maker doesn't tell you, the banger is going to tell you. It's going to give you that information. So
well,
we do it that way.
One more, which would be
what do you got?
Effects. I mean,
but that's the potency kind of, right? Isn't that
well,
like
it's not just potency though. For example, haze gives a very different high than a strong indica. The indica may be as strong or stronger, but it's not the same. I mean, you get from haze, you can get the most psychedelic, cerebral, it's mental, and also too, it's seedlingless. Whereas a lot of more indica varieties, they reach a point where you really can't push past that point.
Yeah. What do you think the best way to? Because my feeling on that was always that they would confuse potency with feeling, and they would be like, well, you know, the level of the stone is how I feel. So it's a great way to put it. You know, if we were to put it in, it just kind of I think it's so hard to get. Yeah, because they are going to have to judge 30 rosins at home, and then they're judging roughly 30, a mix of, 80% of them are going to be melt, and then the other 10% or 20% will be the dry sift. So I just want to try to make it so that they're able to really be honest with what they're saying and have it matter, instead of pulling them into this kind of, other way of doing it. So
I get that entirely. And that is actually your responsibility to cut to the end of stuff to say, but it's all those other factors are important also at the spur of the moment, but it isn't really what it looks like. It's how
Yeah.
it affects you in the end. And I really like your idea of getting rid of the potency part, because that's a lot of the problem with marketing cannabis products and everything else is just chasing the numbers. So I get
Yeah.
that entirely, but describing, I mean, I would just leave that as an open answer.
Maybe describe the high.
Tell us something about this besides potency.
Yeah.
Well, that's
We
Describe the
already
effect.
realize you're completely erect, or
Yeah.
or you're superhuman,
Yeah.
one or the other.
But
So,
part of the problem is if they're smoking multiple varieties the same night, it can be very difficult to tell which effects
Yeah.
came from where. It
And they
really
will
is.
be.
but if you're gonna get an effect that's really impressive, you're not gonna realize it an hour later, unless you just smoke
No.
one thing during the whole day, which is fun, but you can't really. Also, a little tip is you guys are having a competition for things that are easily preserved and really do not have a season. You're not trying to have a flower contest in October when people are just harvesting still. So it give a lead time.
Rob,
Just-
it's kind of like when we used to go to that Santa Rosa Harvest Festival for years, well, which was long before us. What was really important to there was bag appeal, which didn't matter to me at all, to be honest. I want to know is how does it feel in my brain?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
What's it going to make me do? That's kind of what's going to happen next. It's kind of the question. But
Back then for me, it really what it was, we didn't have, I don't know, people retailed their bags, obviously, but at the contest, it was 1 quart mason jar appeal.
yep. And then
I wish
what?
I'm
Shout out
wrong,
to
but
some
it
of
was a 2 quart masony, but I mean, that was, and I loved that. That was what drove the whole dispensary thing to begin with. You could stick your face in the jar, and that's what's missing in marketing today, of course. But
yeah
with
regulation.
people, you have to remember with hashish, people do these fresh things now. It's still hashish, but you're squeezing the flower. I mean, you're getting all the terps and things, but got to remember that might be great in a pipe, but it's not what people who've smoked hashish before modern hashish consider to be hashish. There's a lot to be said for shelf life, transportability, and a lot of other things that actually, to me, define a piece of legendary hashish.
Yeah.
That it's stronger
Yeah,
and terpier is not really the end game as hashish as a cultural product.
When I was in Afghanistan, nobody would smoke dry sipped, unpressed. They always pressed it. And I think Bubble Man and I found that smoking dry sipped, as long as it's aged and cured, and you don't have to press it. In fact, I preferred it unpressed because it had more flavor and taste.
Yeah.
Same
stopped
with
pressing
melt
my
now.
bubble.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
stopped
feel the
pressing
same
my
way with
bubble.
melt now. Yeah, I mean, I see
Totally.
a lot of guys press it and they hold it up to the light and they want to make a flag. I feel like if you just put it in there and you use a nice gavel and you have a good bubble cap and you can get that convection to occur, you could really, put a pearl or two in there to keep the temperature correct. You get a totally different feeling. And I, on Sundays I only smoke melt because it's a kind of just a fun thing to do, and it's a different day. I clean the house, I do a bunch of stuff on that day. So.
Addison, have you smoked those induction pipes?
Yeah, I've hit a couple of those, and there's some new ones too
The
that I keep
first
seeing.
hit on an induction pipe is incredible. The second
Best.
one is not as good because you've already taken the cream.
Yep. No, those are amazing, and that's what I was going to get back to the judging and get back to some of these other events, and I see shout out to Hashish and the Smoking Jacket, and these other events that have a really intricate program for the hash makers to judge, and they've got a full booklet, a ton of questions. I think Simply Adam is the one that's done that stuff. What do you guys think about the depth? What do you think about filling out a larger program or filling out a larger survey when it comes to judging. We just talked about the 4 or the 5 different components. Do you think that's too much? What do you guys think about that?
If the survey is too big, then the hash can't be strong enough, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to fill out the fucking survey.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. That's definitely, and I think that,
wanted
you know,
to add something about that. Well,
Yeah.
you guys were talking about it earlier. I kind of bit my tongue the whole time, but now that we're kind of getting back to it, for me, when I see it, I judge that based on, did it make my mouth water? Did it make me really want to have a hit based on just the color and the texture and the sweat that's coming off of it or whatever? So looks are important to me, because it tells me, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most important. I could end up hitting it and the effects could just be so good that I'd be like, I don't care what it looks like. But I do like to know, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 or whatever it is, how excited was I when that jar got opened and I looked inside of it? How happy was I? Like, that's just what I want. And then the same thing with the smell. When I smell it, like, how high up did my eyebrows go? Did it make my mouth water? Did it make me really be like excited that I was about to get a hit of this tasty? And so those two are important to me for that, you know, those two
One
as
thing
well
that's
as
become very important in both the cannabis market and in the hashish market is terpenes. And
oh yeah,
until Rob and I discovered in 2000 about the terpenes, nobody even knew about them.
no.
True. I mean, honestly,
Very
Tony
true.
didn't even start. Yeah, I'll tell you that conversation got started with us and the Hash Church group. I mean, you started it with me, hands down, Sam, but you were so ahead of your time that had you been doing that like on Hash Church, it would have blown up the same way it did for Tony and Blue River and myself, who was doing it up in Canada. And that all came from Kay, who was sitting with Alexander Shulgin.
Tricom Technologies.
Kay from Tricom, Kenny. He was doing these terpene extractions. Shulgin was doing these terpene extractions. And he hit me up and he was like, dude, I'm with Sasha right now. We're doing these terpene extractions. I'm telling you, you have to figure out how to get the terpenes, hydrosols, whatever, out of the water from the hash that you make and get it back into the hash. And he was adamant about it. And I was kind of like, ooh, I'm not like really in a lab right now. I don't really. So I basically told 2 people the same day that Kay told me. I told Tony, who happened to be in Florida at a lab, which I suspect he asked one of the chemists, hey, how do you do this? And they probably said steam distillation or hydrovac diffusion. Just make sure you use a really good chiller to precipitate the vapor back into a liquid so it stays clear and doesn't go yellow. That's really the trick to doing terpenes.
What year was that, Marcus?
2014.
2014.
It was the year basically that like rosin came out, and it was the year it all just co-aligned and came together. We did the first solventless pen for Bubbleman brand and Blue River down at Steve's place at Harborside there. And that conversation really just spurred. I told Tony and I told Horatio, and those 2 guys had terpenes within like 2 to 4 weeks. They both had, and I remember getting the Blue River ones. I remember getting Horatio's and being like, holy shit, like these are pretty. I mean, it's wild that it died down in popularity, which is probably good because it was probably not good or safe for your lungs to consume.
It's an irritant
on that.
Yeah.
On that concentration, especially as a chronic.
You know, the reason I asked for the date was because in that past life that I had with Steep Hill, you know, the next thing for us to kind of dig into after potency, after contamination, was terpenes. You know, and I think it was 2010 when we introduced the terpene test, and Paul Daly, who worked with Sasha Shulgin, was with us, and he helped create the assay. And then we put that testing together, and we did the first terpene testing. I think that was you know, possibly done on that level, having access to the medical cannabis and having access to what Harborside had in BPG. I think we actually introduced the first terpene tests, and it was, you know, I think probably 2010 is when we first started doing it. But you did see a lot of interest in terpenes coming in, and then when Tony brought it out, and everybody was kind of adding terpenes to stuff, or I remember guys were just dabbing terpenes straight. They quickly learned that like you're vaporizing an irritant at that point because it's so concentrated, and it quickly died down. It kind of became, something of just like a novelty at that point. But yeah, it was definitely a weird era right there from about '08 until about 2014, where there were so many questions. I was going to Amsterdam and getting to judge hash at the Amsterdam Cup, and I think I might have judged like 10 or 14 of those events. But I learned real quickly. At the same time, I was like, wait, there's something else going on here that's not just the active compounds, and I think they called it the entourage effect, and it was referred to in all these different ways, and how the terpene was priming the receptor for the active compounds to then either have full access to that receptor or just a narrow channel to get to that receptor. Rob, is that how it worked? Does that make sense? Does that kind of, because I know a lot of people think of it that way. Based on what is that actually factual?
I think the time course you're describing is factual. I mean, the whole issue about terpenes is really simple to me. Not all terps are good terps.
Yeah.
They're aggressive compounds, as you've all said and realized.
And some terpenes do
Because
not
there's
contribute to the
stages
high.
with a live plant. It's you start with a live plant, you dry it, and then all the Cincy growers are always talking about curing. And nobody ever got it in the Netherlands because you don't really have a natural climate here. I mean, 3 days ago it was 30 degrees in September. Okay, you could have had a harvest by now. Even indoors, you can have one anytime. And then 2 days later, and like 80% humidity. And then 2 days later, now it's 22 degrees and 60% humidity. And then in 3 days, it'll be wet again. I mean, nobody got the idea. So curing wasn't a thing here. But people who live in some arid place like Arizona, they just tried to slow it down. So curing like cheese or things like that will have to happen in some controlled situations, but it's important because you got to get rid of terps. You don't want in your final product.
If you grow a variety that's extremely high in terpenes naturally, and you dry it and then cure it for 3 months, you reduce the terpene content quite a bit. But because you're smoking such pure resin heads with little else, the terpene levels are actually fairly high, even though you reduce the terpene content, that the plant had live. But I prefer aged resin, extremely high in terpenes naturally.
Yep. And my next question for both of you and Rob, or all three of you guys, what do you think of this whole push now to Pitella? Have you seen Pitella? Are you guys familiar with that? And what is your thought? Because to me, it seems like the Pitella is really popular because of donuts, because of putting a snake of hash into a joint. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys have an opinion on that? Is that something that you saw a long time ago that came back? Why is Pitella here?
By Pitella, you mean weed with hash?
No, it's hash. It's hash that's been cured, water hash that you seal and cure, and it sweats and it looks kind of like a rosin. And so, I mean, honestly, when my bubble did that back in the day, it was kind of looked down upon, but you nailed it. It's all about the Spanish being able to put it into joints, and not just with flour, but also with tobacco. And it just burns. So it just burns so perfect for them. But I wouldn't kick it out of bed for eating crackers. It's like, for Rob and Sam, it just looks like a sweated out brick of full mount. It looks like rosin.
When we used to make, Rob and I used to try to make pure hash joints. We did it in Morocco with really, really good hash that we made ourselves in Morocco. And it was very, very good because normally in Morocco, they use 100 kilos of plants, dried plants, to make 2 kilos of 0.0. Well, we took 100 kilos of plants, had to manicure it, get rid of all the seeds and stems and everything, and then gently shake it. We got 150 grams. But the hash was like the best Moroccan hash I ever had at my up until then. I mean,
Oh, there we go.
It was really, really, really killer. And we tried to do it here in Amsterdam with my hash, and no matter what we did, you can't do it
You
because
can't do that.
as
Too
soon
much
as you
moisture.
no, it's when you
No.
heat it,
Too
it
melty.
melts and bubbles and it clogs the joint. It's impossible to
It's
hit.
water. Listen, the key to the hash joint is you can't use material that's that good. It has to pretty much
Yeah.
be under 50% THC.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
what I'm saying.
Yep. And those are popular.
that
You
is
know,
the truth.
I remember in Oakland they had Pixie Sticks. That was Steve and Ian's company that they had for, and they sold those at Harborside.
Exactly.
And those were great. I remember those.
Yep. So that was we had a Canadian group that did the same thing around a similar time. I don't know who was first, but they've been doing it for probably since like 20 years now or something like that.
They're amazing, man. That's probably one of my favorite ways to smoke, actually. I'd love to have those again. I'd love to see those come back on market. And I actually invited a kid to Legends this year who makes them. So I'm looking forward to kind of having, Marcus's product's a great one too. That's a smart way to smoke right there. That's
Your hash joint.
yeah, that's definitely, seeing those now brings me back to, I could taste it just kind of seeing how they are, because it is really a great way of smoking for sure. But it can't be too pure.
What Rob and I liked the best was hash that was as pure as you could make it with as high a resin content as possible, but it wouldn't quite melt, the joint and glum up the joint so that you could actually finish the joint.
There's always something to be said about having just enough plant matter to be able to roll it up a little snake and stick it on the end of a pin poking through a beer coaster, pop a glass over it, and
have you seen the
flush
hash
all
kettle,
that
Rob?
shit down the toilet when you're done. So
Boom
on that
hits.
traveler's note, I am out the door, guys. Thank you so much for this. It's been super good. Good to catch up, and I haven't had all the concentration I would have liked with you guys, but I'm really in flux here right now. Now I gotta go.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for coming, dude. We
Peace and love.
appreciate
I'll
you
be
making an
back. This
appearance.
is only part one. Let's run this up.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We'll do it
Yeah.
again for sure.
let's push
Thank you,
the
Rob.
combo.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Peace to Bubba Rob.
Thank you, man. That's such a pleasure. It's an honor.
I was
It
going
really
to show
is.
him the kettle before he left, the hash kettle, which is, this glass blown little kettle with a little mouthpiece, and you put the hash inside, and it's just basically exactly what Rob was talking about.
I remember
But now it's a product.
I remember the glass pipe I saw at your glass shop, which was a bent Coca-Cola can made out of glass with little holes in it so you could smoke it like you do out of a Coca-Cola can.
Dude, that was Brian Ratcliffe who did that. Cool Liquid, aka Rat Dog. That guy, he not only did the pipe, and if you remember, Sam, he made that pipe. This was at the Degenerate Art Show that I threw with Slinger at the Melting Point years ago. It was a crumpled up Coke can made out of glass, and it had the pinholes. You could smoke hash out of it. But he built a small little wooden box, and he put grass down on the box, and he had a small piece of chain link fence coming up behind it because he wanted it to look like you just finished puffing it at high school and then threw it next to the chain link fence, crumpled it up and threw it down next to the chain link fence in the back area of the high school. So he also did a bowl where he hand spun the bowl, not on a lathe, and it was a big bowl. And this was like 2002. And he filled it with like 4 or 5 or 6 apples that he also blew out of glass that were also each pipes. So this whole bowl of apples were all glass pipes as well. So shout out to him for sure. And shout out to you for remembering that, Sam. That is awesome. Very, very cool. Well, we did an hour and a half. I was
impressed because as a youth, I will admit, I actually used Coca-Cola cans a few times. I mean, I can't say I'm proud of it. I mean, it's an aluminum pipe, but it's the truth.
I mean,
dude,
what
I think the
call yourself
aluminum
if
would
you
have been a
haven't?
lot. Well, the aluminum is the least of your problems. It's the paint. on the can that you really wanted to burn off prior
I
to
would
using
scrape
the
that
can.
or burn it off first. Absolutely.
Exactly. You got to torch.
Or-
You got to torch that paint off.
Or the butane from the lighter. That could always be a interesting additive.
Ooh. Yeah, I always tasted it myself. I won't lie. I always
Yeah.
tasted it.
Oh yeah.
Well, if
No,
you're
it's,
you're a purist, then you can do things like I used to use little solar mirrors on the beaches, because every time on a windy beach that I would try to light my pipe, the wind would blow it out. So I got these little solar mirror focusers, so you could light it with sun heat, and man, they work great. It doesn't matter how windy it is on the beach. You
works.
can puff easy.
yeah, those are naked and afraid rips. I like those. That's the
Totally. Naked
Yeah.
and Afraid rip. Legends of Hash podcast, episode 1. Busted it out. Hour and a half. Feeling pretty good about that, guys. I appreciate you coming and sharing your time with us, Sam.
Absolutely. I love to promote hashish and cannabis. I think everybody in the world should be able to have it wherever they are for whatever reason they want.
It's a good message.
Man,
I got
that
a
is
question.
That is the motto.
Before we go, Sam, I have one question for you. I think a lot of people, the new hash makers, the hash makers that have been after you for years, that have followed in your footsteps and are inspired by what you do. What's your message for the guys now? If you have one single message to say to them, what you'd like to see from them, or if you could just kind of give a short little sentence.
My message is more to the people who grow the cannabis. I would like to see it, and the people who grow it will hate to hear this, of course, so that it's more like the price of tomatoes. I mean, it's so regulated and so worth so much money. People want to steal it. You got to have security. It's just a weed, for God's sakes. And yeah, it's a very noble plant, but I wish that weed was never more than about $100 a kilo, so that you could afford anybody to make hash out of it.
Quality, yeah, and demonetize it in that way, which is, it almost reminds me of like when you're in the country and you see a fruit stand, and there's just a stand with the fruit out there, and then a little bucket you put your money in. It's almost that it's so universal that you wouldn't steal the fruit and you wouldn't not leave your money because of the value of what you're looking at. So that would be great if we kind of got to that point. But
I always dreamed of, if I was living in California, which I don't, but that like somebody grows Christmas trees,
yeah,
where you could quite literally just be able to have plants. I mean, Christmas trees take a couple of years to grow, and they sell them for $100, $200, whatever. But cannabis takes one season. And if you have a big enough piece of land, there's no reason why you couldn't sell them for $100. If the consumers would come, harvest their own plants, take them away on the roof of their car, and off they go. If you've got 10 acres of land and you've got all these plants, you're going to make a good living.
Yeah,
the grower.
I'd love to see that. That'd be an interesting model for
God.
California, especially. That'd be nuts.
10 acre U pick, the 10 acre U pick, hundo a plant.
That'd be amazing. Pick for yourself. But yeah, just one last thing I want to say. I wanted to memorialize a great glass blower that passed away, Bone Lord Glass. He just passed away, I think, a week or two ago. Was a great guy, was somebody who definitely loved cannabis, loved hash, and brought a lot of amazing tools and equipment to people that were smoking. So I just want to give him a memorialization and shout out to his family, and I hope that his family's healing and dealing with this. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Bone Lord Glass. So
shout out to Bone Lord Glass for sure, and shout out to Michael the Fat Man. Shout out to Horatio, rest in peace. And shout out to the Bizarre Brothers, melting in peace.
Oh, yeah.
Melt in peace. Josh and Corpy in space. bless all the fallen soldiers. There's no shortage of them. And
Hashi, cannoli, of course, so many.
oh my goodness, dude, just an endless amount. Well, I appreciate your time as well, Addison. I think we had a nice little inaugural episode, nice and chill. We'll tighten it up as we go along, but that was fun. I know everyone enjoyed it. We kept our 130 whatever viewers on the entire time, and we'll see if we can't get some nice views. And I'll post this up on the podcast. I'll put it in as Legends of Hash. So you can search for it as Legends of Hashish on Google, Spotify, Apple, all of them basically. So
Awesome.
Peace out, everybody. May the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. See you next time.
Legends
Have
of
a good
Hash,
one.
December.
Everybody.